is Michelle Cohen, and I'm a career and skills consultant in the UCD Career Centre. So I am responsible for the caseload of the College of Arts and Humanities. And joining me is my colleague Sarah Brown, and Sarah is the career and skills consultant for the College of Social Sciences and Law. So this is the second session of our alumni panel series that's running throughout trimester 2. Last week we had careers in education, and next week we have a panel event on careers in business administration and management. Today you're joining us because we have a fantastic panel lined up for you in relation to careers in digital marketing and communications. So I'm going to introduce Aoife Casey, and Aoife is joining us. She's the Group Brand Manager for Maldron Hotels in the Dalata Hotel Group. And Aoife completed her degree here in social sciences at UCD before going on to the Smurfit Business School to complete her master's in marketing and practice. So very much looking forward to hearing Aoife's career story to date, and a little bit about her current role, what she enjoys and the challenges of that, and all her hints and tips for careers in that space. And also joining us is Louise Keogh, and Louise is PR and Content Manager at UXDX. Louise completed her degree in English and Sociology at UCD before going on to the other side of the city to complete her master's in DCU in PR and Strategic Communications. So I'm very delighted to have you both here today, and as I said, looking forward to hearing your stories. So there is a Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen. So at different intervals throughout our conversation, I'll be checking in with my colleague Sarah, and Sarah's going to manage the Q&A box for us. So this is your session, guys. It's Aoife and Louise are both graduates of Newman, so shared experiences with you guys, and they're more than happy to talk and share their stories and share any advice that they can. So if this is a sector that you're really interested in, please type into chat or the Q&A box any questions that you have, and we'll get to those. So Aoife, I might start off with you.
Yeah.
So I suppose before we hear about your current role, we might go back a little bit to your time in UCD, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about, well, firstly, why you picked social science, and just a little bit of reflection on your time in Newman.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, hi, everybody. It's really nice to be here with you today. I very much remember when I was back in your shoes, and I loved my time at UCD. And I suppose when I was thinking about this and I was thinking about this talk, I was thinking about where did it really actually start for me? And I was telling Michelle, it goes way back, and it goes way back to when I was probably 8 or 9. And I was watching television and I saw a movie that was too old for me, but I took one thing away from it. And it was that I wanted to work in marketing. And that movie was What Women Want. And it is about this man, and he gets the ability to read the minds and hear what women are thinking, and women are the target audience. And then he pitches all of these adverts. So I suppose for me, I was influenced myself, and I wanted to be in this space. I thought, wow, that's so cool. And it never really left me. So when I was in secondary school in the summer of 5th year, I did an internship. And I made my first advert, and it was just so exciting. And I knew, yeah, I really like this area. So when I was leaving there, they said, okay, Aoife, this is what you do. We like to hire people with these open-based degrees, and then specialize further in marketing, but you need to be able to think outside the box. So I went back to my school, I talked to the career guidance counselor, and social science was something she was really pushing. And I looked at it, and it was great, because I suppose, yes, I had all these ideas that I wanted to work in marketing, but what if the reality was I didn't like it? Well, social science would afford you to choose different pathways. And that was something that was really appealing to me, because, you know, it's difficult, I suppose, back then when you're choosing, and it's still tricky in college. Where are you going to put your eggs? Are they all going to be in the one basket? So social science, you don't have to do that. So I was really excited. I applied for it and I got in. And then when I was in UCD itself, I suppose I knew more and more yeah, marketing was for me. So what I loved about social science was how much you could tailor it to what you wanted to do. So I suppose the electives you could tailor, and then in your pathway as well. So what I did was every time I did a subject, I thought, hey, you know, how can this make me an asset to a company if I want to work in marketing? So I chose subjects like psychology, information studies. I did bits of law, like all on top of the general course. And then I did marketing as well. So those were things I loved. You might, depending on the year you're in, get an opportunity to study abroad if this world sorts itself out. I did a year in North Carolina and it was brilliant. So my time in Newman was full of learning different things. It was full of learning things that could be applied to any different career path. So it's something that I really, really loved.
That's fantastic, Aoife. I love that about, doing a broad degree. And it's very interesting that in fifth year where you did the internship, they were telling you that, like, pick a broad degree, don't box yourself in, uh, gain those abilities, like to really think creatively and outside the box. Because that's what a lot of employers are looking for, aren't they? Uh,
Yeah, definitely. It's something that I would be interested in if I was hiring in somebody again now. Yeah, it's really important to see that people can think not just in a really narrow perspective, but in a wider one, especially for problem solving.
Absolutely. And just you mentioned that you studied abroad. Just even briefly, just any highlights from your time in North Carolina?
I would say if you are not going to, or if you have the opportunity or you're thinking of it, delve into where you're applying to. It is so different. We grow up and we consume so much media that's American, and it may not be apparent to us even how vastly different the culture is. Maybe over the last few years, we've seen that more obviously, but it's a very different culture. And when I went over there, their way of studying, their way of socializing, very different. So in UCD, you've kind of your main chunk of coursework and you're followed up by this kind of test and you're really focused in on it. Whereas over there, it's more like secondary school. You've an exam this week and another exam and another exam. So different in that way, but culturally, it's an amazing experience. You meet people from all over the world that have come there to study, as well as the local demographic as well. And it's something that stood to me working in different companies since I joined them, I should say, but since I left UCD really. So it's a great opportunity if you can get to do it.
Okay, very good, thank you. And Louise, I suppose the same kind of question to you, just a little bit about maybe, why you picked English and Sociology, and a little bit of a kind of reflection on your time in UCD.
Yeah, so why I went in and chose English and Sociology when I was in secondary school, I actually did LCVP for my Leaving Cert, which is kind of, I don't know if everybody knows it, but essentially, you do a few extra subjects in relation to kind of event management and a few bits there. So when I was working on that, I did the marketing for our event, and we did a dance competition, and it was very exciting. And I think that was one of the starting points where I realized I really liked doing content writing and writing about things. I also was very interested in creative writing in general at the time. I did debate and a few different elements like that. So I knew kind of I wanted to do an arts degree that had a few different elements going on. Definitely wanted to study English. And I went in and I did information social computing, sociology and English in my first year. I wanted to keep it broad. And I found them really interesting, and I really liked the creative writing aspect of English and learning about kind of other writers and reading loads, and it was brilliant. So I ended up specializing in sociology and English because I wanted to keep that mix in there. You can't actually do that anymore, so, but it was great at the time. And then while I was in UCD, I also got involved in a lot of societies, which I'd highly recommend if you have the time to. I chaired the LGBT Society and also the Please Talk mental health charity, which I actually don't think is around anymore either. So showing my age, but it was really, really exciting because it meant that I could market those societies and communicate to the whole UCD and try and get more attendees and stuff like that. And that's kind of how I ended up in PR eventually. But it was a really exciting time for me, and I definitely think it really paved my career. And also another thing I did in UCD, which I really enjoyed, was I got a career mentor through the career group. So that was brilliant. I ended up having a PR manager there as well, and she was really helpful and really kind of guided me as well. So even though I thought I was kind of going for more marketing, I ended up in PR, which I'm really happy I did in the end. So it's a little bit different, but it's definitely kind of the best place for me. So
Very good. That's great. And it sounds like you kind of utilised the kind of, I suppose, all the different supports or resources that are available through a university the size of UCD, like the mentoring programme and getting involved in societies, because so that's the way you can really build experience kind of outside of your degree experience. And so that sounds great. And that mentoring programme it still runs very successfully for stage two students. So that's very good. And Aoife, when you were here or in UCD, I keep saying here, I'm in UCD in my mind. When you mentioned in a conversation we had earlier that you actually kind of engaged in the services of the UCD Careers Centre, would have been at the time, Careers Network.
Yeah, I did. And guys, you're on this webinar already, so you are availing of some things, but definitely make use of it. When I was finishing up in UCD, as Michelle mentioned, I went on and I did a master's in Smurfit, but you couldn't just apply for the master's and they decide whether or not you get in. It was a very practical master's. So what you do is you work in the agency that Smurfit runs for the year, and you have billable clients, so clients that are paying UCD for you to do work for them. So there is quite a competitive process to get into it, but you need to apply with a CV, you need a cover letter, you need to do several rounds of interviews. And I really wanted to be part of it. And I was aware that my background wasn't pure business. So what I did was I approached the careers office, and they had several things on and they were really good. So there was a CV workshop where you went in and you went through your CV in detail. There were interview preparation workshops, which were so helpful. And then there was also time spent with somebody one-on-one where they really just asked you questions to get an understanding of what you wanted. And they asked you questions like, do you want to be in business to business marketing? Do you want to be in business to consumer? Well, if you want to be in those areas, this is what you need to be thinking of. This is what you need to be researching. So really helpful. And I think it gives you an edge as well, because so many people that were applying for that, or that were applying for a job, it was their first time putting together a CV, their first time going to these interviews. So getting that type of preparation really helps you stand out from some of your own competitors.
Very good. Yeah, absolutely. That's great, Aoife. And it's great that it's a positive, it had such a positive impact on you. So Louise, maybe you might take us through, I suppose, you're in your final year in UCD. What was the next steps for you? I know you did a master's, but you might tell us a little bit about kind of the internship journey, your master's, and take us to your first role.
Yeah, of course. So after I finished in UCD, I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do. I was new kind of PR marketing, obviously, as I was saying, was something that was interesting me, but I kind of at the same time didn't know if I wanted to jump into a master's. So I took a year out and worked in an office and got admin experience, and kind of took the time to reach out to different colleges and like ask them about their courses. And I went to loads of open days and meetings, and it was very exciting. And because it is a big step, it's quite a bit of money as well to go into a master's. So it's really good to definitely know this is like going to benefit you in your career, and this is where you want to learn. So then I ended up in DCU doing the PR and strategic comms masters, and it was something that interested me because it was very PR at the time, and they had like the internship afterwards, which is part of the program. So once you finish the program for your last 3 months, you were put onto an internship program, and that's how I ended up with Conway Communications, which was my first job. So I applied to a few different internships and ended up at Conway's, and I really enjoyed it. It's a very small PR agency. They've actually recently changed their name to The Hive, so if you're trying to look them up, they're now The Hive. But it was only a 4-person agency. I settled into the company culture very quickly and ended up starting my full-time role there, and I worked there for just about 3 years, and it was a really, really growing experience. I started off helping out the client director on loads of different projects. So I was working on mostly festivals and festivals and events at the time. So I was doing PR for the likes of St. Patrick's Festival and Culture Night and loads of different things. So it was very, very exciting. But then I found my love for working in tech mostly. So I ended up working with clients. One of my main clients was Twitter. I also worked with business clients such as Dublin Bus. And then I also worked with a startup tech incubator called Talent Garden. So that's kind of where I led on to where I am now in UXDX. So UXDX is a tech events and conferences company. So I work with loads of different organizations in tech to have them speak at our conferences, and mostly what I do is PR them, and then I also do the content writing. So writing up for our website, writing up anything really. I'm the writer of the organization. That's what I do. But it's really great. Yeah, I love it.
No, it sounds great. And so if we kind of take a step back, so I imagine like a lot of people here would have, because virtue of the name of the event, they have a sense of what like PR, digital marketing, etc. is about. Like, how would you describe it? Like, to, I suppose, if you were explaining to a friend what you do, what would you kind of break it down in kind of in your own words what your role involves?
Yeah, so for me, for public relations, I think it's really evolved over the years, and nowadays public relations deals very closely with marketing. But to break it down, essentially it's changing the public perception of a company. So what you're trying to do is essentially brand that company in the eyes of their customers, get new customers for them, and kind of change the story and the messaging. So how you do that is by making sure the copy on the website reflects the organization properly. So rewriting blogs, or also like even rewriting website content. You can be trying to get interviews for the CEOs to get their voice out there. You could even be copywriting. I've been ghostwriting for like CEOs on Twitter. That's really fun as well. And then also one of the more traditional forms of PR is just getting media coverage. So trying to get organizations to media to write about your organization. So if you have a launch, trying to get all the news outlets to talk about it. So it's really exciting. It's very, very quick work. You know, if you have a launch day, everything's going hellfire, but it's really exciring. So
very good. Yeah, it sounds really, really interesting, and that you're constantly having to kind of think about like your messaging and how to appeal to people, and especially in such a kind of fast-moving environment. So it's very good. And Aoife, I suppose we'll come back, Louise, a little bit more about your kind of day-to-day role to delve into that. But Aoife, I suppose the same question to you. So you're in your final year of social science, and you know that you want to do marketing. So do you want to kind of take us through your story?
Yeah, like I suppose when you're considering marketing, guys, it's really wide, you know, it's really, really wide, and there's lots of different things to consider. So, you know, you'll hear people talk about agency side or client side. So agencies, really, you tend to work with lots and lots of different clients, like Louise mentioned. Whereas if you're working in client side, which is what I'm in at the moment, client side means you're with the one brand or the one company, and you really have ownership of that. So often within my role, I'd work with lots of different agencies that specialize in different areas, and we work together on how we can bring the brand to where we want it to go and how that brand's going to be perceived in the market. So the area that I'm in is brand management. And when you're in brand management, you tend to kind of have a finger in every single little bit of the pie because the brand is everywhere. So the brand can be printed in a newspaper, it can be on a radio, it can be on a podcast, it can be on display advertising, it can be on social media, and you're considering your SEO, your PPC. So you're working with lots of different experts in those areas together to form that. So there's so many areas you can work in marketing. So that's something that I'd really consider what you like, you know, and you can go into quite a general role when you finish if you want. You can go into a general marketing role, feel out what you like. Are you quite into event management? Would you like to be that part of it? You know, do you want to specialize more in PR like Louise did? Would you like to be really involved in digital, or do you want to kind of keep going up the more general pathway and go into brand management? You know, there's lots of areas, and the Marketing Institute of Ireland actually is really, really good to have a look at those different career pathways and what you could do there.
Very good. And did you find, so when you decided to do your master's, were you open at that stage to, you were interested in marketing, but you were open to kind of what area, and it was learning the trade, I suppose, in your master's?
Yeah, very much so, because I suppose that master's has a huge focus on market research, which is a whole other area. You could be a specialist in market research. But for me, yes, I was very open to, okay, I want to learn about marketing. I want to get more in depth. I want to see how that works practically, and then how I'm going to apply that. So I suppose when I was finishing up in UCD before going into my master's, so there was 2 intakes back then, and you got what you got. So I got February. So I had some time. So during the winters, I'd often worked with events companies. So I did a little bit of work with them when I finished up my final exams. And then I was working in a reinsurance company, and instead of event marketing there, it was totally different. It was a rebrand. So they were doing a new logo because their business was moving function. They were then needing new signage. They were needing a new website. So all of those different elements. And I really, really liked that. So then when I moved over into my master's, there was a lot of market research involved in that. There was some areas of social media. So again, I was getting exposure to different things and understanding where I really wanted to develop in. And then that would have all came into the consideration in the roles I was applying to after that. And it's really important to settle on a role that you're going to enjoy and that you really want to do, especially when it's so wide. There's so many opportunities for you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I might just check in with Sarah as regards questions, just because I don't want to a pile of questions building up.
Thanks, Michelle. So we've got one question at this point. It's from Kristen, who actually is from the US originally, but said she's been living in Ireland for a number of years. She said she's going to graduate when she's a little bit older, so she's just wondering how could she market herself to show off her skills in a way that age doesn't matter.
Okay, hi Kristen. I suppose this is quite a personal question to you, and to fully answer it, I'd probably be asking you a lot of questions. So we can take this offline if you want. But if you're slightly older graduating, I would think you probably have a wealth of experience from various different areas within your life. And sometimes what I've seen is that people that have all of this experience, they're going for really, really junior roles. But actually, if you look at your skill set, you can definitely take on something a bit more further along the pathway, especially if you're redoing your skills. A lot of them merge in, which is definitely what I found. But if you want to catch up after this separately, that's totally fine. We can, and we can talk through maybe some personal branding tips.
And I think, oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, work away.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think as well, it's really important to remember that I guess you are coming out of university now, so you have the latest knowledge, the latest trends under your belt. You know, you're going up against people who may have been working in the industry for a long time, but at the same time, you have the latest news and the latest skills. And another thing as well, if you're either going into marketing or PR, like definitely look out for places like the Marketing Institute, as Aoife was saying, or the PRII, the Public Relations Institute of Ireland, and they have constant events on, and so do loads of agencies, and you can hear kind of the current trends within the industry that are actually coming out of the companies themselves. And it just may give you that extra edge when you're going into interviews to kind of be able to pull out those, like, you know, new insights and stuff. So it may really help.
Very good tips. I suppose from kind of our perspective, when we're advising students, we look at different types of CVs and always say, like, have a look to see what's going to enhance and show off your skills and your experience to the best kind of degree. Would you have a preference if you were looking at someone's CV, whether it might be like a chronological CV or a more skills-based CV, or would you just say it really depends on how they present themselves Aoife, have you got a kind of preference for the type of CV that someone shares?
I do. It's not so much the type of CV. It's not even the order you go about in it. It's how clear it is. So if you have advertised a role, you tend to get in stacks of CVs. And, you know, the reality is, and some really good advice I got from yourselves was, you've about 10 seconds and that's it. And it's not 10 seconds to read the detail, but somebody's going to scan it and say, okay, does this person have the top things that I actually need? Will I spend my time now drilling into this? Because I have a stack more to go through. So I think really clearly laying out the CV is really important. Don't have too much words, you know, bullet point key things. If you're going to be going with a certain tense, stick to it throughout, except for maybe where you're in your current role. Really high attention to detail is really important. So if you get the person to the second stage of your CV past that initial, oh, it's clear, I see things there, I'm reading it, you know, make sure that you're having action words in it, that it's clear, show the results that you've had. And if you're just finishing college and you don't have much experience, think about the different skills that you're learning in the different, you know, modules that you're doing. What do you have? So have you experienced writing reports because you've been doing them in some of your modules? Have you experienced, you know, running social media for XYZ? Did you do anything on maybe Google Garage if you were interested in digital marketing? Or if you haven't, you could start doing some of those things now so that you can add to it. But really nice, clear CV, clear responsibilities of what you've done, and really clear results there as well.
Something I'd love to add to this as well is we're currently actually hiring a marketer in my organization, and it's been a slow process because we want someone who's definitely going to fit into the company, into the culture. We only have a small team. So something that I have looked out for in the past in hiring for PR roles and also now is someone who can really show their personality. And so cover letters are so important to me. If you can really show your personality and show your kind of a bit of yourself, it's really good, because company culture is a huge thing, even in large and small organizations nowadays. And also another thing I look out for, and actually is the reason we are now taking on intern in my organization that we had not planned to at all, because she applied for the marketer role, which was way above what she was capable of, but she was so interesting that we took her on for an internship, is because she applied with a portfolio. So even though she has no solid work experience, she applied with a portfolio where she showed like her skills on web design, her skills on research, and just showed like her writing abilities, and that really sold us and really won us over. And now we have her working on a specific project for a new campaign we're bringing out. So it just shows that like kind of showing off whatever skills you do have in whatever form you can is brilliant. So just as well, one of the things I always did when I applied to jobs was I created and designed my own website for my CV, and I applied with that website as opposed to just a regular CV. And I think that's kind of what always made me stood out of the pile of the CVs. So there you go.
Very good, very good. So that actually ties in really nicely to the next question that I was going to ask. So Ilkim was saying, do you recommend having a portfolio? And also, is there any kind of particular platforms or things that you think are particularly good? So obviously, in terms of you, Louise, that obviously was a big thing that kind of help that person to get the internship opportunities. Have you got any kind of recommendations as to where to create a portfolio?
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well in PR in particular, I'm not sure specifically for marketing, as I haven't actually applied for marketing roles myself, but in PR, like a big thing, you will have to actually usually present some kind of portfolio, and you'll most likely have to do a writing test before you get the job. That's very, very commonplace for any roles in PR. But what I used was just WordPress, and it's quite cheap to pay for your domain if you want to. If you don't pay for your domain, it's okay. I'm sure they won't be annoyed about the ads on the page, but I use WordPress and I just find it very easy. Also, if you're not very good at coding or website design, it has a lot of tools and templates there for you. So something that's really important to put in if you're for PR basis anyway is just explanations of writings that you've done. So that can be like, if you write a press release yourself about a company, it doesn't have to have even been published before. It just shows your skill in writing. So that's what I did for one of my first jobs. Was I just pulled together 5 press releases and a few pitches that I'd written, and they obviously had never been sent to the media before. I'd never had an opportunity to, but that's kind of what showed them that I could write them. So that's just a really good way of doing it.
Very good. Thanks very much. Some good tips there. Aoife, is there any tips or portfolios that you'd like to add?
Yeah, it's not so much a portfolio. I think when you're going into an entry level general marketing role, it's probably not something you're going to be asked for. But what you should be thinking about heading to an interview, I suppose, is a couple of different things. You're definitely going to be asked some general marketing questions because they'll want to see your interest. So it's a good idea to keep an eye out on, you know, marketing websites, Adweek, things like that. Have something you can discuss to show that you have a bit of passion in it. Then as well, I mentioned the Google Garage, HubSpot, things like that. You can do free courses on them. They're short, they'll give you something to talk about. And by having them on the CV, it is showing what you're doing. Now, you may be asked, depending on what you're going to prepare a presentation. So you're probably going to be familiar with PowerPoint in university, but that's a really good opportunity for you to showcase a skill. In marketing, you need to be able to present all the time, and you need to be able to present information and communicate information, you know, through speech, through visuals, and through writing. So often that can come up. So something really good to practice on there, practice how you'd present it, practice how you'd show it, you know, and when you're doing that, keep in mind the brand that you're applying to. So that's something that's quite valuable when you're going in there, that skill set.
Very good.
Fantastic.
And maybe one more question at this point, going in thick and fast, but this one to both of what you've said as well. So we have a question here as well about master's programs. So I know that you both studied masters. So this person is just wondering, can they go into marketing from doing international modern languages? So I think from both your experiences, we know that is possible. They're just wondering, would it be possible maybe to work in one role and then kind of change and go into a marketing role later as well? Or would you recommend kind of trying to go into marketing from graduation? Maybe I'll ask Aoife that question.
I think, again, that's a very personal question. So it really depends, you know, what is that other role? Of, you know, how easy is it to segue? Maybe you can segue and, you know, take a step forward, or maybe you'll be going laterally. It just depends on what it is. You know, you might go into something, you know, to do with computer science, and you might spend quite a lot of time coding and building websites, and then you think, I actually want to be a bit more involved in the digital marketing side. Well, you've quite a skill set there that could be quite useful, you know. So it really depends on what it is you personally want to do. If you want to catch up after this again as well, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. That's totally fine. But I do think with modern languages, like if you look at companies and what they're looking for, especially within Ireland, because it's such a hub of global and European businesses, they're often looking for people that speak 2 languages. So this is a real asset to you. So again, if you're going for an entry-level role and you have a second language and they're asking for that, and then in the meantime, you've gone and done a few of these marketing things online that are free, you're showing, hey, I actually have a bit of a background in marketing. I can do some practical things right off the ground in this job, plus I can speak the other language. So it's a really good asset for you to have that.
Fantastic. And then we have maybe another question from Quiva, who's studying sociology and information and communications. She is just wondering, I know that you both did masters, but do you think this is something that you needed to have to secure your first roles after graduating? Or do you think that you could have entered, you know, by doing an internship, and would you have been able to get where you are today without your masters? So maybe Louise, if you want to share some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, in my last job, we actually had people joining our company who had either a master's, someone had a graduate diploma, which is essentially a master's, but without the thesis is kind of just a bit smaller. And then also we had someone else who came straight out of their undergrad, but did a year or two of freelancing, doing social media marketing for small companies in their local area. So I think it depends on what skills you want to bring to the role. The reason I did a master's was because I wasn't sure of public relations fully, and I wanted to make some more connections. I wanted to enhance my skills a bit more, and I wanted to kind of get a jump start on my career, because I kind of, you know, taken that year off. But at the same time, you know, one of my best friends went straight from her undergrad in UCD into a graduate job in Core Media, which is a very large marketing agency in Ireland. And she is still working there and growing her career and doing great. And I think, you know, it really depends on what you are looking for. If you feel like you need more information and you need that bit of extra boost in your education, then definitely look into a master's. But if you feel you're ready, I see from the question, actually, you're doing information social computing. Like, I think that's a really good course. It really gives you good grounding in, like, you know, website design and blogging. So you definitely probably have the skills there to try and apply to some entry-level jobs and see what you're getting back, you know.
Perfect. Thank you. That's great. Michelle, do you want to go over? Perfect.
Yeah, I might ask one or two questions, then come back.
Yeah.
I can see there's quite a volume of questions.
Yeah.
As well, but I might come to Aoife just to ask a little bit about your current role. Like, can you take us through, like, what's a typical day? And you're probably like, there is no typical day, but just to give us a sense of the role of a brand manager, and you're like a group brand manager for a hotel group. So it'd be great to hear a little bit about that position.
Yeah, sure. I suppose everybody always says about the job, right? There's no typical day. But if you're looking at it generally, and if you're looking at the wider scope, I suppose the brand managers, you know, every day you're going in and you have a brand, and your brand has so many touch points. So it's everywhere that somebody experiences that. And that's not just for, you know, a services brand like a hotel. It's not just when you're physically in it. It's how you experience the brand when you see it places. It's what you hear about it. So for a brand manager, you need to always be looking out far into the future and working on a strategic journey to bring the brand to the consumer. So you need to think about, what is that consumer? What do they like? What are they interested in? You know, how's the product being developed to fit that? And then you need to bring that to life every single day. And I suppose I'm going to say something that almost contradicts now, because I'm saying you need to be really far into the future, but you need to be so present in the everyday. You need to have your finger on the pulse of society. You need to know what's going on, how are things changing, and you need to react really quickly to that and to jump on opportunities. And I suppose something that I saw was quite good last week, and it was probably done by IKEA's branding team, but there was Bernie Sanders, and he was sitting kind of on his chair, you know, like this, and lots of people were hopping all over it. You know, they were making memes, so it was relevant in society. People were interested in it. Now, at no point, I would imagine, did IKEA think, Bernie Sanders, we're going to use him in a campaign. But when it became relevant, what they did was they got a photograph of him on the chair, and they popped up one of their products, which was a really similar chair to what he was sitting on. And they put that out on social media to be relevant and on the pulse. So no, that wasn't in their 5-year strategy, but it was being adaptive. It was being right there, listening, social listening. So that's, you know, like, if you're going top level here, the role is all about thinking long term, acting in the present.
Wow. Okay. Gosh, it sounds really interesting. And what do you love, and what's challenging about the role?
I just love marketing, if I'm being so honest. Like, I really like it. You know, I really like that you're coming up with creative solutions to different challenges, creative solutions to opportunities. So it's a really enjoyable area to work in. You know, skills that are good to have in the role is good communication skills, always working to build relationships with people, because essentially you're building a relationship with people via your brand. And then, you know, really being analytical and strategic thinking. And then challenges, I suppose, in my role at the moment, I'm working in the hospitality industry. So the last year has been one of the most challenging within it, and you need to be constantly responsive and constantly adapting. So, you know, having hotels spread over Ireland and the UK, there was different situations going on in different countries. There was different situations going on in different counties. So it was constantly being, again, on that pulse and up to date and up to speed, and having various different scenarios and various different plans for each of them. So that can be one of the challenges. It can be, you know, it's being reactive and how you need to be, and making sure it's still in touch with your consumer, not just reacting because you need to do X, you know, keeping that in line with your overall strategy.
Okay, excellent, very good. And Louise, can you tell us a little bit about UXDX, what it's like to work there, and kind of your kind of day-to-day role, what might a typical day look like?
Yeah, perfect. So as working in UXDX, I'm actually working internally as the PR manager for like one company. So it would be quite different to work in an agency, what I do now, but it's, you know, I really like what I'm doing. So what we do essentially is, like Aoife was saying, we have long-term plans and short-term plans. So we have quarterly goals that are kind of overall to the business strategy. And then my kind of job is for each month to set myself personal PR and comms kind of goals. So that could be, say, in March, we now have a conference in the Asia Pacific region. So my goals was to get X amount of press releases sent out. It's also to get a certain amount of social media documents drafted for speakers so that they can promote themselves. It's hounding the speakers to actually put up social posts about themselves, about the conference. And it's working with the videographer to get pre-content filmed and put up on the website. So anything content related, I'm kind of handling. I'm also writing blogs, ghostwriting blogs for speakers for our website, trying to track traffic to our website. So that's kind of a few things I'm doing at the moment. And then I'm also now looking at our next conference in October for Europe and thinking about what kind of content we want on that stage and what speakers and what businesses we want involved. So I kind of would be dealing with like the messaging of the company and how we can work around that. So also PRing, getting media drummed up in Ireland and ready for our October event, and like getting the word out there. So there's ticket sales coming in. So that's kind of like my regular day to day. That's kind of what I do.
Excellent, very good. Guys, they both sound such interesting roles. I love that idea of that dual in the future and then what's happening now, and like constantly between the two.
Yeah. You'd be amazed how much myself and Louise's role, we were chatting about this earlier, overlap. Like a lot of what Louise was talking about there, I would be involved on, but maybe, you know, I wouldn't write every single blog, but there's, you know, there's a huge amount of overlap between what we do. So when people were talking about moving between, you know, different areas of marketing, like it is that easy, you know, they're very transferable skills. Yeah,
definitely. And such a range of roles in the area, like so much you can do under the banner. So Sarah, I can see more questions. I'm conscious that people are really interested in this space and really want to tap into Aoife and Louise's knowledge. So I'll just check in with you as regards questions.
Yeah, perfect. So we have a question kind of looking for some advice on how to best prepare in a kind of competitive marketplace. So someone's wondering about how they can develop their skills and how they can be adaptable. So I know you kind of suggested maybe going on the Marketing Institute of Ireland website, maybe looking at online events, writing press releases and that kind of thing. But yeah, Aoife, have you got any kind of more tips on how students can develop their skills?
Yeah, so I suppose if I was sitting right now where you are, like, and I kind of said some of this stuff before, but there'd be like certain steps I'd be taking. So I'd be thinking, okay, am I going for a really general role or am I going for something a little bit more specific? I'd be deciding, okay, what type of company do I want to be part of? You know, Louise talked about a cultural fit. That's really important because when you're interviewing, they'll get a sense of your personality and they'll want you to fit their culture as much as you want to fit theirs. So, you know, really have a look at what you want, because when you're talking about that competitive advantage, actually fitting into a culture at an interview will stand to you. So then, like, I'd be thinking about, right, is this company with this type of role, is it a graduate role? Are they going to be doing psychometric testing? If they're doing psychometric testing, there's free sites online where you can practice that. And I think that that's something that's really good to practice, because sometimes you think, hey, I'm really good at English, or I'm really good at maths, or whatever, that they're going to be doing the psychometric testing, and you go in and you're just not used to it, and it doesn't reflect your abilities. So that's something that you can do, and I definitely would have done. So then, marketing specific, the areas that I mentioned already, they're really good to get online, to have a look. You can probably Google as well, like outside of those areas, Google things like free basic marketing, you know, courses or whatever, and you'll have a little look, you'll have a see what's up there and what you might be interested in that area that you want to go into. Then I think I would definitely be using the career services. Work on your CVs, make them really clear, because that's so important. That's what's going to get the attention. I was having a look at some of the questions there that came up. People asked, should you use the branding of the company? Yeah, if you want to, but if it's a legible color. So for example, the brand I'm currently with, it's yellow. If you're going to put a lot of yellow in your CV, it's not that easy to read. So, you know, consider things like that as well. Weigh it up. You know, the other thing is, I suppose, just if you are going to do that, don't butcher it, you know, try and get the color close, because you're not going to have the color code yourself. So if you get it really, really close, it shows a good eye for detail. If you just pick a random yellow because it's yellow, it might not. So consider your first impressions, you know, what can you show? So you need attention to detail for marketing. So really show it in your CV. Then when you're going in for the interview, it's all about the first impressions. I'm sure you're all nice people, so be nice at the interview, you know. One tip that I got was, don't kind of have your hands hiding under the table, you know, treat it like you're in a business meeting, which is probably new for a lot of you. But, you know, if you're in there, I would at an interview always bring a notepad and a pen. I'd take down notes. If they, you know, are asking a question or they're interested in an area and you're hoping you're going to get to go to the second interview round, you know, write down those things, come back with more information on them, because that's what they're interested in. So those are all just little tips that can make you seem that little bit maybe more professional than other graduates that are going for it, because you're going to be well organized, you're going to know about your subject area, you're going to arrive, you're going to be able to speak well about different things, and you're going to be treating the interview a bit more, you know, like you've got a bit of experience. You're going in and you're being professional with them, and that's really important. If a company is hiring in a graduate, they want to see, yeah, like this graduate can come in and they're going to hit the ground running. They know what it's like to work in a company, even if you don't.
Very good. Thanks very much. Some really useful tips there. Louise, have you got any tips that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I do. So I have it makes me think of my career. I have a career mentee at the moment who's currently doing PR masters, and she was asking me, like, well, what do I do to show these jobs like that I actually want to work in them? So she's really interested in fashion and beauty, which wouldn't be an area that I particularly worked in. So I was advising her to go, and which is what I did for the tech, which was to go and look at different PR agencies that do fashion and beauty, and who are their clients, where are they getting news in the media. And they also hold loads of different events. So a good PR agency is called Elevate PR. They hold a monthly events on different topics, mostly fashion and beauty. So if you're not interested in fashion and beauty, don't look at them. But one of the ones they held there recently was called The Future of Beauty and Personal Care. And they had some amazing speakers on it from the industry talking about, you know, what's trending, what's great. So kind of having that idea of who is important in the industry, reading the news, especially for PR, knowing editors, knowing different media, like knowing what media would be important to the brands that your agency would have, is really, really important. And that's an easy thing to do. It's just all about keeping on the trends. So I would definitely recommend to do that. Just keep reading the news. So.
Very good. And I suppose that would be really useful. We've had some questions about how to go about finding an internship. So by being up to date and seeing who the kind of key players are. I suppose that's a great way that students can approach agencies and different organizations directly. Is there any other kind of websites or different resources that you might recommend for finding internship opportunities?
Well, for me anyway, something I'd recommend with PR agencies is a lot of them are quite small. You know, usually there's definitely max 50 people working there, but most of them that I know, there's only about 10 employees. So I would recommend when you're thinking about applying, especially if you're, say, in your final year now, it's about this time, it's January, well, it's actually February now, anyway. But I would start like sending emails to certain agencies that you're interested in. Just ask them if there is going to be internship opportunities coming up in the summer. You know, when would they be advertising this? Would you be best to send your CV? That kind of thing. That's the best thing I'd recommend to do, especially with small PR agencies. Certain bigger companies, it might be harder to get the attention of people for that kind of thing, but it's definitely small PR agencies. There'd be no issue in just asking. Perfect.
And same question to you, Aoife.
Yeah, like God, it seems like such a long time ago that any of that would have been going on. But I think relationship building is really important. So if you're looking for an internship, see who you know that might know somebody, you know, that could really help you out. See, like I had done work, if you remember what I was saying, in events. So I had done them at Christmas time, and it was normally Christmas and ice, and then there was Taste of Christmas, and then there was Taste of Dublin. And then when I finished my degree, I had more time. So, you know, I leveraged that connection and I got to go in a bit deeper and work a bit deeper in it. So I think that's important. I think the points Louise made are really good. I think especially at the moment, you know, getting an internship may be quite a different route than before. Companies may not be, you know, openly advertising them perhaps as they had been doing. You know, not all of their internship programs may be going ahead. So actually approaching them the way Louise said is quite good. It shows initiative. What I would say is first impressions are just so important. So if you're going to be sending them emails, you know, make sure that your writing is quite good in it. Make sure you're writing in the right tone for that organization, and that it's really clear. If it's a smaller company, I'd probably chance my arm and call them. Because again, you don't know, like you could be getting somebody on a really busy day that's like, oh, what's this? You know, and they mightn't actually read through it. So if it's somewhere smaller, definitely call them. And if it's a larger organization with a central hub, you could call them and just ask, hi, I'm really interested in this, but you know, prepare your points before you call them. So write down a few bullet points there in your piece of paper. Actually practice saying it, because, you know, I suppose it can be kind of nerve-wracking if you're approaching these people for the first time and you don't want to be on the phone forgetting and thinking, oh no, I wish I'd said that, you know. So just, they can't see you, so just have your points there and, you know, look at them and think, yep, I got an answer to that one. Yep, I'm going to ask this, and yeah, I'm going to ask that. And then you know, and you can be confident in what you're saying. That's really important.
Very good. And I suppose as well, like, I suppose you're on all forms of social media. Have you got any advice for students when they're thinking about the kind of image that they need to present on the different kind of social media platforms that they're using? Maybe Aoife, we'll go to you first.
Yes, lock them down. So just, I'm going to be really honest here, like companies check this stuff. They do. Now, I know when I finished my master's, I did a career development program with a big biotech company. So they hired in 15 of us globally, and there were people from Peru, there were people from Kazakhstan, Ireland, America. It was a real mixed bag. And the day one of the job was flying over to Kentucky, and it was for 2 weeks of training. So when we were there, it was brought up by somebody that came in to train us on how they expected our presence to be online now that we could be representing the company. You know, that you needed to either have things very private, and anything that was public, let's say you were on Twitter and you wanted to tweet all the time, have a disclaimer that tweets your own opinion. If you're going to be on LinkedIn, you know, keep it professional. But they did mention that there were other candidates that were quite far along in the process, and when they were doing their due diligence, was an American company on them, that they'd seen pictures of things and they just thought, no way, like this person is not how they're appearing to be at an interview. So I think you know, like there's so much, you've such a digital footprint online that if you're going through interview processes, you know, definitely make things private. I suppose sometimes you can have in-jokes with people, but somebody else could read that very differently. So text written, it's so open to interpretation, as Louise probably knows. You probably rack your brain every time you're writing something, thinking, how could this be interpreted? I would just make your profiles private, and then your LinkedIn, I'd add your experience there and make that really nice, so that if somebody wants to find out something more about you online, that they're going to go to the social platform you want them on, because they can't find anything else out about you on any of the others.
I've slightly different advice on this one if we have time to quickly run through it. But something I think is really important is to create an online persona for yourself. So especially if you're going into any kind of colorful career. So something I do is I have my Twitter, it's a lot of personality on there, but I also make sure it's a lot of business. So I'm sharing stuff about my job, but I'm also sharing stuff about what's happening in the industry. I'm sharing news that I'm interested in, just as Aoife was saying, make sure, you know, you're careful about, you're not putting stuff up that would deter people, but it is really important to make sure, you know, you show that you do have a life online, you're not scared to show it. And, you know, a lot of my colleagues would still be friends with me on, that I've had in the past on Twitter and engage with me there, clients as well. It's really important to kind of show color. And I guess, like, I used to work with Twitter, so a lot of the people I worked with in Twitter follow me on Twitter. So it's kind of just, I do think it is important to, if you do have social media, to make sure it's colorful. And if you're showing that you're just blocked, like I do have my Instagram on private, that is one that I do, but my Twitter, for example, and my LinkedIn, I'm very happy to make sure everything's like there for people to know and read about. So yeah, that's my
I think, Louise, you made a really good point there. So I think if you have something, right, and it's not your general stuff, because I would use, like Louise does, I would use a lot of the social platforms for business related purposes now, because that's how they've developed and you get connections in them. But I think if you're really great at photography, there's no harm having that type of an account, but don't have it, you know, like have stuff that you would be quite happy for a potential client to see on it, you know, and say, look here, like my photography is really good. I have a good eye for detail in these things, you know, like, yeah, Louise's, I think that's really good advice that she's given. But if it's just your general chats account, think about that one, or make posts private.
Yeah.
No, it's excellent advice. It is probably generated. Is there another question, Sarah? Or are you okay? There's someone chat there.
Yeah. So it's Quiva was saying she's got 70,000 followers on TikTok. Public. Would that be a problem?
I actually have a good response to this. So one of my friends from UCD is Chris Sanamdum. I don't know if anyone knows him on TikTok or Instagram, and he blew up his following, and because of his great ability to work on Instagram and TikTok, and he actually got a job. He currently actually is just focusing on social media, but he was working in a PR agency for a while, because he was able to say that he was able to run a social media account. He's able to do it well. He's worked with brands, like he had brand deals at McDonald's and all these different ones. So he's able to actually prove that it was a good tool. Now, if your company doesn't like your social media, it might show that maybe you're not in the right sort of company. But if you're in a very colorful creative agency for marketing or PR, most likely they're actually not going to mind if you're running them against social media, but you're doing it well, you know. So that's my advice area for it. So
yeah, and keep in mind who's interviewing you. You know, so if you're going in and have a look at their LinkedIn, who's going to be your interviewer, and ask. And if you can tell by looking at that, this is somebody that's going to be really interested in that. Like, I think that's very impressive that you've built that following. I think it shows that you have an understanding of, you know, going into quite a new social medium and activating it and building something, delivering a type of content. So that's quite good. But, you know, it does depend very much on who's interviewing you, and exactly what Louise said about the type of company as well. So
very good. Well done, Quiva, on 70K. 70,000. So Sarah, is there anything else, or question?
Maybe just the last question to wrap up, because I suppose I'm conscious of time.
Yeah.
So it's someone's just saying, what would you say the most enjoyable and the least enjoyable aspects of your job are. So maybe just in a couple of words, perhaps, Louise, what would you say is the best part and what's the least enjoyable aspect of your role?
Yeah, I have to say for me, the most enjoyable part, like in this role and working in an agency, is the fast-pacedness of it and how things can kind of keep you on your toes. Like I really enjoy that. One of the things I hate the most is dull days, or like days, the day right after a campaign finishes, it's always so quiet and all you're doing is analysis and dealing with data, and you're just like, no. When things are in the moment and you're going, it's so exciting and so much fun. So that's what I love about my job. It's just go, go, go.
Perfect, thank you. And Aoife, what about you? What do you love? What do you hate?
Like I love the whole process of branding. So, you know, the whole from start to finish of that, like doing your market research, learning about that audience, and then bringing your brand to life to them. And it's a very creative process. So it's really, really enjoyable. Things that I don't like, genuinely, I really, really like the role. There can be days, you know, where things are like, oh God, everything's suddenly gone from moving really fast to moving 1,000,000 miles a minute. And you want to make sure you're always really nailing in and that attention to detail to your brand. So they can be more challenging days, but like, they're still very good and they're very satisfying days, even if they're more challenging.
Very good.
Perfect.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Yeah, no, that was brilliant, Louise and Aoife. Like you shared so much. I would love to have heard from the two of you when I was in university.
Mm-hmm.
A different career. Because you really brought to life, I think, how the role is, and just so much creativity. And it's like a role that's based in the real world, if you know what I mean, like real world events. You're not in silo, like real world events really impact your roles.
Oh yeah, definitely. All the time, Louise. I'm sure for you too.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And so so it's fantastic. And I think probably that's one of the most sessions, Sarah, we had so many questions and people were quite specific. So
yeah.
An audience that was really, really interested in what you had to say. So I'm conscious that some people might have to log on to other lectures now, because so, and also to let you guys back to your day, you're busy people. But just, I suppose, on behalf of myself and Sarah and UCD Careers Network and Alumni Relations, just to thank you both so much for time and all the fantastic tips that you both shared. I imagine students are going off with lots of notes about Google Garage, HubSpot, and lots of courses they can do, how to actually market themselves. So really much appreciate your time. And Sarah, thanks for navigating all the Q&A.
Thanks very much. There's an eval form in the chat there, so if everyone could take a moment just to kind of put their observations there, that would be great. So thank you. Thanks very much, everyone.
Okay. All right. So thanks to the audience for all your questions, and yeah, we hope to see you in the Careers Network soon.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.